me just make one quick comment. Today is election day. Some of you may have voted, some of you may be intending to vote. Just a little inside baseball here. There's 14 amendments, and 2/3 of them didn't really need to be on the ballot. But there's a constitutional limit on how much the legislature can spend every year, and it's not a complicated deal. All they have to do is have a simple vote in each house, and they can override the limit. But they didn't want to do that because nobody wants to go into the next election saying, I voted to bust the budget. And so instead of having a simple vote to override the limit, they went and had a 2/3 vote in each house to send it to all of us to make the decisions to fund a bunch of stuff that they could have funded themselves. So that's why you've got 14 on the ballot. Understand, they just bucked the decision to you.
And so we're going to talk about a few of them today. The first one being what we're going to call taxes are falling. I'm sure this is going to apply to mostly everyone here in the room. Brent, you want to start with this one?
Sure, absolutely. So there are, as John mentioned, a handful of constitutional amendments on the ballot today. One of those deals with the homestead exemption, the increase in the homestead exemption. And then for those of you who have already received your property tax statements, you will notice that the school taxes should have gone down this year. And that's due to the tax rate compression that was passed during the 88th, the second special session of the 88th legislature. They finally all came together and figured out what property tax relief was going to look like. And a big portion of that is rate compression for school districts. One of the benefits about rate compression is that it applies to everyone. The homestead exemption only applies to homeowners. Certain other exemptions only applies to certain property types. Rate compression, because we are a state that has one rate all across the board, anytime that rate comes down, it impacts everyone equally. The little bit of a background talking about rate compression. The average school M&O tax rate in 2005 was $1.48. In 2007, the legislature did compression and reduced that to about $1. Between 2007 and 2018, it crept back up to about $1.10. And in 2019, under House Bill 3, they did additional compression, brought it back down to $1. Last year, the compressed rate was around 91 cents, and this year, the average M&O tax rate for school districts due to compression is 73 cents. So that's quite a bit of a reduction over the last several years. So,
If I could just throw in, this is real. I mean, this really is a major tax cut because what they've done over this period of time, they've cut the rate in half. So now that's only on your maintenance and operation part of your school district tax, but the tax rate has been cut in half.
and then comes along the mean old appraisal districts and we raise your values and wipe it all away. So, sorry. But we are in a very hot real estate market, and so we're doing our job and we're doing the best we can to stay on top of that. But John's right, it does cut that M&O rate in half, and this is true property tax reduction. So I'll be happy to get well, commissioners probably don't care much about school tax rates, but.
No, so, but it is one of those things that residents and my constituents rarely look at their tax bills broken down, right? So what they know is what the total is at the bottom. And so those things, the school taxes and city taxes and any other hospital district, all those things all do matter because most people are just looking at that bottom line. And so it is helpful to for all of us to see some compression like what we're seeing.
Rhonda, have y'all had any feedback from clients on tax bills that they've received this year?
No.
No
I mean,
complaints.
They've noticed that they've gone down, so I think that's a good thing.
Yes.
But the tax rate compression, we're talking about Proposition 4 then, right? Is this part of Proposition 4?
It's the funding part that I talked
funding
about
part.
earlier is
Yeah.
part of Prop 4, yes.
And then, because I was noticing on Proposition 4, there was appropriations, for the school districts did state appropriated funds. So that's kind of what I was thinking with Prop 4, so the tax rate compression is kind of a little more detailed and a lot more complicated. But,
Well, in another part of the tax rate compression, another component is the over 65 and disabled person freezes. So in 2019, when the legislature did the first big tax rate compression, they didn't account for those individual homeowners who were over 65 that already had their taxes frozen. So those folks did not recognize any benefit from the compression. They came back subsequently and said, okay, let's recalculate those freezes and give those folks, this is the first year, they're going to see a benefit of rate compression over the last 5 years. So in Hunt County, the tax bills went out from the tax office 2 weeks ago, and we've had property owners calling our office saying, you know, I probably shouldn't tell on myself, but something doesn't look right here. My school taxes were $1,500 frozen last year, and now you're telling me they're zero. Well, that is correct, because of the additional rate compression and going back and looking backwards and recalculating those freezes. So homeowners, and especially those over 65 and disabled, are getting a major benefit from this rate compression.
And if I could just add a little on that, is that, and I saw this, I was mayor of Carrollton prior to being county commissioner, and our taxes are confusing, and for your normal constituent, when we talk about freezing and what exemptions are, those are not across the board the same, right? So if your city taxes or have one thing, we're talking about in this case, school taxes and then county taxes, and you could have other tax entities as well. And so that does bring up some confusion, and when the people call to say, how come mine is not frozen, like that's the school tax, maybe not your county tax.
And let me just throw this in so you can be bipolar about this topic. First of all, the half of you that is the homeowner part should be thrilled.
Yeah.
But at some point, the rate's going to get set, and everybody knows this in Austin. There is going to be a shift as to who pays the tax, and that's going to shift to the business community. And to put this whole thing into perspective, so this all started in 1997 with Governor Bush. At that time, the school district property tax exemption was $5,000. The county tax exemption mandatory is $3,000. It's still $3,000 today. And so under Governor Bush, who went from 5 to 15, just last year, in May, a year ago, we voted to take it from 15 to 40. And today, we're voting to take that from 40 to 100. Again, the happy side of you is happy about that. In the meantime, the elder exemption elder and disabled, has stayed at $10,000 the whole period of time. Now, while we're doing that, we have given totally disabled veterans 100% exemption. We have given first responders who become totally disabled and or their spouses 100% exemption if they're injured in the line of duty. And then the other thing that you got to watch in this whole thing, this is why when you're talking to the folks at Vantage One, you got to really pay attention, because not to them, they take care of you, but there was an overall limit placed on how much the total amount of property taxes can go up. And so if it's a school district, they can only go up 2.5% total without holding an election. If it's any other governmental entities, cities, counties, they can only go up 3.5%. So what we have done is we've now reallocated the amount where it can go while cutting on the homeowner side. So be aware, the shift is coming and your business is going to pay for it.
And if I could just follow up on John's numbers, I'm a numbers guy, so I always like to look at those. If you have any question whether or not this increased homestead exemption will pass by the voters today, here's some historical data. In '97, when it went from 5,000 to 15,000, it passed with 77.5% voter approval. In 2015, it went from 15 to 25 with 86% voter approval. In '22, it went from 25,000 to 40,000 with 89% voter approval. So I would imagine we'll be well over 90% voter approval going from 40,000 to $100,000 increase on the homestead exemption.
Let me throw one more thing on that real quick. Just again, put this in perspective of what Brent said earlier. People are calling in and saying, my M&O rate, maintenance and operational rate on my school bill is zero. Okay, so with a $100,000 exemption, let me throw you some numbers real quick. That is to what is the median value, that means the one in the middle, in various counties for property tax values for homes. Collin County in this area is the highest at $337,000. The next highest is Denton County at $297,000, Rockwall at $283,000, and Dallas at $194,000. What is your median?
We're around 225 right now.
So think about that as to how, to get to that middle number, how many people are totally coming off the roll? Totally. Everybody gets the $100,000 cut, but some of these people, that had a $150,000 house are going to have a $50,000 value instead.
Well,
So-
and John, in some of the rural school districts, so there's 1,014 school districts in the state of Texas. 397 school districts have an average home value of less than $100,000. So there are some rural school districts where almost every home in that school district is going to be paying zero school district taxes. And the state has to pick that up. It's the state's job to make them whole. And I think we're going to talk here in a little while about some of the options the state might have moving forward, because this is not a one-time thing.
But the hold harmless, the keep them even is only good for the next 2 years.
Correct, that's right. So there's going to be some school districts that are going to be struggling moving forward.